Good evening and welcome to another edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television, and glad you're able to join us for what is going to be a interesting, I think, In Focus program. The last 15 to 17 minutes of this program will be has already been recorded. Dr. Jennifer McCormick was nice enough to sit down with me a couple of weeks ago when she was in Newcastle, her alma mater, and give me a few minutes. So we had a chance to have a conversation, and we'll hear that a little bit later on. The first 37 and a half minutes, I'm told, is all we have. I'm going to spend with a local political operative. Can I call you that?
Whatever you want to call me, Eric. That's
or does
good.
that put you like in a Michael Cohen situation?
No, whatever you want to call it.
Pete Zaleski has been nice enough to join us for this evening, and thank you for agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's going to be kind of fun to be able to get a couple words in edgewise. Usually when I'm on, I'm in between Ken Poust and Jeff Plaster, and I can't get any words in.
Those two, man, we should bring you out with him on election night, and we can just sit and just look at you for a little while, because no, you're not going to speak. For those who may not know you, give us a little bit of background.
Grew up in Richmond, moved away a little bit for college at Butler, lived in Fishers for 5 years, moved back in 2003. Family grew up in Phillips Drugs. Dad started that in 1955, so well ingrained and anchored in this community. And then about 7 years ago, got involved in the political process, actually a little before that, but actually went on county council in 7 years ago, and so involved a little bit there, other community organizations all around. And
you were a little bit behind the scenes in some of the political arena for a while. What made you decide to throw your hat into the ring? You took over for Benny Hirschberger, Wayne County Council District 3, and you decided to give that seat up and not run this time. But 7 years ago, you had to be appointed, which means you kind of had to say, yeah, I want that. What made you do that?
I'd been involved with the Republican Party in campaign events, involved with city council. I live in the 2 mile fringe in the taxation without representation area of the city, so I can't be in the city politics. County council came available. Benny had served that post for many years, and that opportunity came available. My dad had been in politics, had ran for actually state rep at one point, so he had ran. He lost to Sally Hutton by 13 votes in her first city council election. So
really?
Go back a little bit.
Okay. When you stepped into that, and I know city council, county council is different, but on average, how much time in a month did you spend looking at county business, going over financials, reading minutes, figuring out the pros and cons, what's going on with things? About how much time is involved in that?
I think every week is a little different. On those weeks where I have meetings, I'm spending a little more time making sure that I'm prepared for those meetings. But I would say on average, on any month, I'm spending 30 to 40 hours on county business, whether it's going through the county. I go through the courthouse. I go through the annex building every week, making sure I'm up to date on the minutes, making sure we're up to date on the upcoming agenda. If there's not something I'm current with or familiar with or comfortable with my knowledge level on it, trying to get more knowledgeable on that.
What's the learning curve? You said you had been involved in politics, kind of behind the scenes with the Republican Party, so you weren't completely unfamiliar with it, but once you got into it, what was kind of the learning curve that you found for that?
Oh, it's a full year, I think, that learning curve. You're learning what council, their specific duty is, which is the fiscal body of the county. What are your legal options? And having the purse strings, obviously you have control of a lot of the policy that follows the purse strings. The budget process, that starts in June, July. That's really where the learning curve ramps up, and you really figure out, all right, this is where the meat of what we do, this is where it starts. And it really takes a year to get that under your belt.
Why didn't you run again? You could have. You hadn't been in it that long. We've got people that have been in office for 20 years, 18 years, 40 years. You were 7 years in, only had to run once, ran unopposed. Why the term limit?
That's a self-imposed term limit. I think all public offices should have term limits. If the legislature's not going to put that on us or impose that term limit, I imposed it on myself. I set it at 2 terms. I've had some folks say, well, you didn't really serve 2 terms. I only served one term. I was a year short of my 2 terms. But it was majority of 2 terms. That was a self-imposed limit I put on myself. I'm not looking at anything else, but if I were to look at another office in the future, I would put that same limit on that office.
Okay. We heard during the election, particularly as we were talking to the 2 folks, Beth and Nick, that were running for your seat, things would come up periodically at the end of some of the forums, and they'd go, that's really not what the county council does. Can you tell us, what does the county council do? What is their responsibility?
If it has a dollar associated with it, it's council's responsibility, period. Now, there's a lot of policies that are determined by the commissioners that we kind of bend and wedge ourselves into and have a little bit more say in the policy side through those purse strings. So number of employees, the salaries of employees that's 70% of what the county budget is, or maybe a little more at this point. But that's the biggest thing we deal with. Then you have to deal with, okay, really what we're talking about is allocating dollars to provide essential services to the taxpayers.
Okay.
Most of those services are provided through the employees of the county, so that's where the large part of that's where the majority of those dollars go to. But to maintain effective services for the county. So you got the infrastructure that goes with that, the IT, maintaining the buildings, looking at law enforcement, making sure the equipment that the officers have is adequate. The sheriff will bring those things to us and making sure those dollars are available. The jail is up to par, is as safe as can be in a jail, and those services are provided. So that's one of those pieces that the county provides for all law enforcement jurisdictions, with being the jail. But
how do you balance what has to be at least a little bit frustrating, having the purse strings, but not always having the power of the office, as it were? In other words, you all are dealing with other elected officials, and people go, well, why don't you tell the treasurer to do? Well, the treasurer is an elected official, and your control over that office is only so great.
So other elected officials, they have say over how they run their department, and legislatively, they have say over certain areas. For instance, you brought up the treasurer on how we invest dollars on the county. Most of those are through CDs and really low interest mechanisms, but the treasurer is the one that decides how those are distributed and what mechanisms we're using. We have limited say in those things. We can make suggestions, we can make, and there's compromises on, okay, so if we're not going to do it this way, then can we work together on this other piece of what you have control of?
I want to go through a couple of things through your years. Good, bad. Good. You were on council when everything came together and the big announcement came that Blue Buffalo was coming to town. How did that work behind the scenes so that the city of Richmond, Wayne County Council, Centerville, all come together to make that fly?
Right, so that was an orchestration that Val Schaefer from the EDC, Executive Director of the EDC, had worked on. I was president of council, Ken was president of the commissioners, and then the mayor of Richmond work together to be able to make that road project possible. And it's not going to benefit just Blue Buffalo. That's going to benefit what's currently there in the industrial park and hopefully future development of what that industrial park will be and future development for the county. So it's fun because you're able to manage different areas and work with different folks in different areas of government. That's really what we should be doing anyways. And good government is, all right, the city has these pieces, these carrots that they're able to dangle at companies. How can we manage that with what the county is able to dangle and what the city has available to them to make that all work together for a package that can compete for a company like Blue Buffalo?
Did it work well for you? Do you think that's going to hold a strong future for this area, that particular company, and everybody being able to pull together to make that work?
I think it will. Blue Buffalo is a strong company. They've had some changes even since.
Yeah, company's been sold.
The company's been sold, but I think they're still focused on staying in Richmond and being a part of this community. Everything I've seen from them is they want to continue to ramp up and do what they want to do to produce the best products available and build and grow their business. But we had Blue Buffalo, we had the demolition of Old Reed Hospital that we worked together on.
That was my next one. Nobody wanted to step into that for a long time. Everybody knew that building needed to come down, but somebody had to take control of that building. And I think for a while, everybody kind of went, yeah, it needs to come down, but I don't want it. I think everybody saw it as a potential money pit. Has it gone smoother than what was thought?
The dollars invested are less. The company and when I say the dollars invested are less, compared to what original estimates were going back 5 years ago on that, it's far less. The company, Renaissance, that's taking it down has been extremely efficient in that process. They seem to be ahead of schedule. They were wanting a more consolidated timeline and knowing how some of these projects can go where you run into a snag we've had enough construction projects that run into snags and we see how they just don't go toward a timeline. This company's been amazing getting that thing down to the timeline. There's still work to be done, but man, it's really nice driving down Chester Boulevard and not seeing that eyesore.
Have you had a thought about what you think that area should become?
Well, a large portion of that property, the lower portion along the river,
Floodplain.
is in a floodplain. There's only a limited number of things you could do with that. Green space is going to be probably the most logical use of that. You can't put any meaningful buildings in that area. Now you go up the hill toward where Jenkins was, and then north of that, there's some possibilities there. There are going to be some restrictions on the type of buildings. I think that's going to be within Spring Grove, so there's going to be some restrictions on that use. So you're not going to see large multi-story buildings, but I think office space, you'll very possibly see some medical practices in there, but it's going to be usable space on a corridor that has very little real estate left, to be honest.
You're not completely walking away from the political scene. The council has appointed you as their liaison to the EDC, as well as the health board. Let's start with the last one that I mentioned, the health board. The relationship between Wayne County Council, and to a certain extent I think the commissioners, and the entity that had been known for a long time as the Wayne County Health Department has become strained. Started, I think, when this federally qualified health clinic came in. And in you all's last meeting, which is available on WGTV online, by the way, you all passed a resolution, shameless plug.
Shameless.
Shameless. You all passed a resolution that basically says that when they reapply in 2020, I believe it is, they need to do it as an entity unto themselves. Explain to the community what that means as far as what we have known as the Wayne County Health Department and what the county is actually responsible for in providing health care safety information to the community.
So I would agree. It started, the federally qualified health center is when the growth happened after that is when that relationship started to strain. And the health department is really two different entities. There's the public health, which is required by law to provide inspections and vital records, and they have some other required duties. But that's the required piece. That's not separating from the county. That's going to continue to be a county entity.
Okay.
And then the other piece is the medical practice, the clinic, the health clinic. That is what has had the huge change over the last few years. When I first got on council, a rural health clinic, which offered some advantages for reimbursement, receiving some medications, vaccines at a lower cost. Then they were able to get the federally qualified health center designation 3 years ago or so, and that offers a multitude of advantages to a health clinic. There is two other entities looking at, there is one, Meridian Services has a federally qualified health center that is a satellite of a Muncie office, and then the neighborhood clinic is working toward that federally qualified status. And the real deal is in Wayne County, we have a large percentage of folks that are medically underserved. The federal government has set up these entities, the ability to set these entities up to help provide services for these medically underserved folks. Wayne County Health Clinic has done a fantastic job of filling the niche of serving as many folks as they can possibly serve. Now, with that being said, the strain comes that there is now they're in a growth phase, and it's really hard, and I can't imagine running my business with the confines of a county government or in a government entity that has the oversight of you can't pay anybody anymore, you can't add new employees without getting an authorization from other entities and other boards. And it makes it incredibly difficult to grow that and serve even a large percentage of folks. The decision to separate from the county is not to close the clinic. It's how do we serve more folks? How does the health clinic do its business without all the confines and all the restrictions that happen within county government?
Is there any, and everything that you've mentioned to a certain extent, Wayne County's, what is the health department, we'll call it that for the time being, their federally qualified health clinic, the one that's going in, trying to get theirs down at 10th and A Meridian, a lot of that is centered here in Richmond. How do we provide, has there been any conversation about how more of those medical services get provided to a wider area of Wayne County, as opposed to
and
everything's right here, and a couple of those are within really just a few blocks almost of each other.
Right, 5 blocks or 6 blocks, I guess. Henry County has actually gone into Cambridge City because they see that there's a market and a need there that they can provide. The other thing that the Wayne County Health Clinic was looking at moving into Union County with their services and branching out and having a satellite office in Union County. As part of Wayne County, that's really difficult to ask Wayne County taxpayers to be the background support for an entity that's in Union County when there's still large percentage of Wayne County that's not served by the health clinic.
EDC, Economic Development, what does this area need, or how do you see your place on that board? What are you looking for? How do you look at economic development? How do you look at that board and what they do?
I hope that I'll be able to bridge some of the political frustrations that happen with those entities. So when I think of EDC, when I think of Wayne County, I think of EDC as one of the marketing arms for Wayne County. I think Tourism Bureau is another marketing arm of Wayne County. But specifically, when you look at EDC, how do we market this county to businesses? How do we market this county to existing businesses? And how do we provide employees, how do we provide services to those companies so they can be as efficient and profitable as possible? I hope I can be a bridge between county government, City of Richmond, other local entities. So try to be a peacemaker between those. I was involved with the City of Richmond and Wayne County and the EDC when we had the Reed Hospital, the old Reed Hospital project. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I can do some of that similar to be able to work with those multiple entities to move forward. And the other thing, being able to work with someone like Chad Bolzer at Ivy Tech or Troutwine here at IU East and say, okay, employers are looking for these skill sets. How can you guys, as the feeders in the education side, help provide some of those services? And I think there's some opportunities education-wise that the EDC may be able to assist with in the future too.
Should it start earlier than even by the time you get to Chad Bolzer, Jason Troutwine? Is there something, and I'm sure there are initiatives within the schools. I know Manufacturing Matters Day, they take kids out, they've put them in those positions. Is there more, and we'll talk as an employer, you own a business and you talk to a lot of business owners. Mm-hmm. Is there more that needs to be done before we hit that college point? Because you're hearing more and more, even during some of the school board conversations, you heard, well, everybody's not college material. We shouldn't be pointing everybody to college. How do you get that knowledge base, that understanding, and how early can that start?
It's tough for the school systems because they're teaching toward, all right, we got to get them graduated. If we don't get them graduated, getting them into a job is secondary at that point, because then their dollars go down. They're not able to provide the services that are needed. But you look at the technical skills that high schools are providing now. There's a partnership with Connorsville, and I think Cambridge is involved in that, where their building trades is really a stellar program over there. And we don't need to be a compartmentalized school systems. We can work together if Union County Schools is able to provide better agricultural training for kids that are moving into agricultural trade. Then why can't Richmond Community Schools or wherever that child is, work with Union County and get those services and that type of education that's going to be more geared toward what they're wanting to do when they get in the real world. I'm not saying we have to consolidate every school system in the county or the region, but we should be able to work together between school systems.
It was suggested that maybe Wayne County should have one school system, not consolidate the schools, but one school system. Is that a workable idea?
It's probably workable. The budgets are going to be difficult. And then you have the piece of, I've always gone to that school, and I don't want anything to happen to that school, and the territorialism happens, and that's where it gets really tough. Mm-hmm. But eventually, I think the state has to come in and say, look, the dollars are limited. We've got set number of dollars. How do we use those the best for the highest amount of outcomes?
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I probably should have done this a few minutes ago. We're speaking with Pete Zaleski, who is currently Wayne County Council District 3, also a business owner in the community. And I'm going to kind of go there a little bit just to get your perspective on a couple of topics. The first one being improving infrastructure, roads, sewers, things of that nature in the downtown area. How's that going?
I'm ground zero for all this stuff. I drove in, was driving in this morning, and I couldn't even drive down 7th Street because they had it shut down to try to, it's frustrating.
Obviously, but necessary, needed, overdue?
Necessary, needed, overdue, probably. I don't feel it's been necessarily managed in a way that keeps everybody informed and everybody has at least the feeling that they have a say in the process. For instance, 27 going north through town is going to be under construction in probably 3 years. The state's going to be working on bidding that project over the next few years, and now is the time for the community to get behind a plan. And if there's certain ways that you want that done, the community should be able to have a method to voice those opinions. Mm-hmm. For instance, the Veterans Parade was canceled last year.
Right.
And if the state knows about these things, they're able to make accommodations. If we don't want construction going on through downtown Richmond between the end of November and December, we can tell the state that needs to be written into the bid process. But the community hasn't had a chance to voice those opinions, and I don't feel they've had a chance to voice those opinions on the projects that are going on currently.
Perception is reality, they say. I hear there's no parking downtown.
It's not getting any better. Let's put it that way. Parking has been frustrating. The folks at the city say the parking garage is completely filled. Now, I will drive through that garage on any afternoon, various times a day, and I think I'll only find about 25% of the spots filled. Now, last
Somebody's
time
at lunch.
It doesn't matter when you go, Eric. I'm telling you what, there are spots open all the time. There's different ways to manage it. As a business owner, it's frustrating when I see other business owners parking on their front door. If you're the business owner, park in the farthest spot. Park in the garage so your customers can have that spot at the door. That's really simple. Those things are frustrating, and that's not that's not the city's problem. Mm-hmm. That's a business owner mentality.
Is it the city's problem? Is it the city's responsibility to bring people downtown? They've invested in what used to be a parking lot, which is now Jack Elstro Plaza. Mm-hmm. They've tried to put events there. There's a thriving farmers market in the summer. There's Ice Festival in the winter. There's Shakespeare in the summer. Mm-hmm. At what point does it become the responsibility of the business owners in that area maybe to marshal their resources and do some things together to bring people? We always hear the city needs to do more for downtown. We don't necessarily hear the city needs to do more for the businesses on the west side or the city needs to do more for the businesses on the east side. Why is it the downtown where it always seems to be it's the city's responsibility or it's the city's fault?
I think the city has a responsibility to work toward quality of life type initiatives. Is that always going to be at Elstro Park? Absolutely not. But quality of life projects are really important, extremely important for people's satisfaction on where they live. Is that just downtown? No. The mayor has said the downtown is the heartbeat of the city. I would like to agree with that. Our heartbeat's pretty weak right now. But it still is the heart of the town. Much of the identity of what Richmond has been downtown.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, believe it or not. That 37 and a half minutes.
It just started,
really
man.
quick.
What's going on?
I only believe what they tell me in my ear. The Stellar Facade project, which is something that people have been hearing a lot about. There's one, Tin Lizzie, that has started. You were one of, I think, 5 businesses that went in to do that. What are you hearing about that project? When are you expecting yours to start?
That project has been ongoing for the last 3 years as part of the whole Stellar program, which is many smaller projects, many projects looped together. Elstro Park is part of that. The downtown bike paths are part of that. So the Stellar is a group of grants. So the Facade is through Okra, through the Lieutenant Governor's office, and it was almost dead a year ago, and the Lieutenant Governor's office had to get involved to bring it back and get the paperwork done that needed to be done. So our project construction has started this fall on that group. Tin Lizzie was the first. We were originally going to be the first and happened this fall. Tin Lizzie had some structural concerns with their building and some safety concerns, so they said, we're a shorter project. We've got some safety problems. I don't have any trouble pushing ours to the spring. So ours is being pushed to the spring. But from day one, communication has been the frustration in that project, whether it's been with turnover in city offices or the architect that the city has contracted with and not communicating with business owners. So even today, I've had multiple emails trying to get a communication line. What's our final schedule going to be for this project? Okay, we started Tin Lizzie. I know I'm in the spring, but when are we talking spring? And I've got some large signage pieces that are going to be custom pieces that we're redoing. We're opening up the corner of our building. So I hope ours is a dramatic change, but there's going to be some custom pieces that are going to take 3 months, maybe lead time, getting it ordered, getting it built. We're right in that area, sweet spot, where we need to make sure those pieces are in place and ordered. What are we doing about it? So the answer to your question, we're scheduled for spring. I hope it's spring. I can't get a good answer on exactly what that means.
Okay. We've got 2.5 minutes left. We're heading into the holiday season. 2 things I want to get from you real quickly.
All right.
One has nothing to do with the holiday season. You watch elections very close. You were here on election night. How do we get more people engaged? You've been on both sides of this thing. How do we get more people engaged?
I want young people to come out and vote and be part of the process. And I don't feel that young folks are coming out. And I feel that the national trickle down is hurting local engagement. The national trickle down being it's not about the person. It's all about the party. And everything is so polarized on the national level, and we see it some on the state level, and I don't think it's as bad locally, because really local elections should be about who's the most qualified person, who's the best person for the job. It should be the person, not the party. And the more we keep moving toward that polarization of parties, the more we have folks disengage from the political process. And really, at the end of the day, we're governing from these polar opposites. When I think 90% of the population lives somewhere here in the middle, and they don't want to live out here.
Got 90 seconds left to go. Some people say Richmond's best days are behind it. Are you optimistic as you head into this holiday season as to what Richmond, Wayne County has in front of it?
We've got good days ahead of us. Are they the absolute best days of Richmond? I don't know. I'd love to tell you the best days are still to come, but there are a lot of smart folks, smart individuals working in leadership roles that I think can move us forward.
Are you one of those people?
In the political process, won't be anytime in the next few years, but as far as a business owner, engaged in the community, I'm not going anywhere. I'm in this community. I grew up in this community. My kids are going to school in this community. Grew up. This is where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you very much. They're telling me in my ear that we are about to get out of here. I appreciate you taking the time. One, I appreciate you stepping into the arena 7 years ago, putting your name on a ballot, being put out there so that people could throw tomatoes or whatever at you. And I appreciate what you've been able to share with me through the last number of years. So thank you very
Eric.
much.
And happy holidays to everyone out there.
Happy holidays to all of you. We're going to take a break, come back and talk to Dr. Jennifer McCormick in just a minute on In Focus.
I'm Bob Beaver, attorney with BBKCC Attorneys.
And I'm Ron Cross, also with BBKCC.
We hope that you can join us for the next episode of Legal Briefs. Joining us will be our distinguished guest, Sheriff Jeff Kappa, as we discuss the topic, gun rights, gun laws, gun safety in the state of Indiana. Look for us on Tuesday evenings at 10 p.m. on WETV Channel 20. We hope you can join us.
Hello, I'm Pastor Pat Dale, Associate Pastor at Bethesda Worship Center, and I'm here to inform you about our program, Christmas to Go. Christmas to Go is an outreach of Bethesda Worship Center that provides hot turkey meals to people in our community. If you'd like to request a meal, please call 765-939-2975. Be sure to leave a name, an address, phone number, and the number of meals requested. Please remember we only deliver to Richmond addresses. We'd also like to thank our many donors and supporters and other churches that helped during this event. Through Christmas to Go, Bethesda Worship Center wants you to have the greatest Christmas possible. Merry Christmas.
Hi, I'm Phil Quinn, host of Connect with Ivy Tech, a new program focusing on all the different things that are happening at Ivy Tech. Coming up on our first episode, we'll talk about the CDL driving program, Spring Express enrollment, as well as the diversity program scheduled for this winter. It's all coming up on this edition of Connect with Ivy Tech, Fridays at 9 p.m. on WETV Channel 20.
Welcome back to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're very, very pleased to be at Newcastle High School with a chance to speak to the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Indiana, Dr. Jennifer McCormick. Thank you very much for giving us some time today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm super excited to be back home at Newcastle, super proud of this community, and great to be here.
I was going to ask, and that was going to be my first question, what brought us here today, and why did you feel it was important to be here?
Yeah, so today we were honoring two teachers, although we honor all educators across the state, but two teachers today that have 50 years in, Mr. Wessler and Mr. Grimes, who've put 5 decades in with thousands of students. So it was a great ceremony.
And you were actually a part of one of those students. You had one of those gentlemen when you were here.
I did. I had Mr. Wessler back in the day in the late 80s. I had a great experience with him. My brother and sister had Mr. Grimes, and he was very rigorous and very demanding in that higher math. And so we had a great experience as a family with both of those teachers.
You said when you leave here, you're actually going and doing some Teacher of the Year someplace else. So today is a day of honoring teachers.
It is. It's a great day. So we're going to be in Indianapolis. We have 69 teachers who are nominated for Teacher of the Year that we're going to, again, honor tonight and then finish that with the Teacher of the Year. So really excited. It should be a wonderful evening, but it started out with an afternoon. There was a lot of fun for one, but also very well deserved.
Back in your old stomping grounds,
That's
as
right.
it were.
That's right.
We've had a chance at WCTV during the election cycle to talk to local superintendents, board members, potential board members, and all of them said there's a problem, a shortage of quality teachers, being able to keep and retain them. Do you see that as you do your travel, and can you attribute that to anything in particular?
Yeah, teaching is hard. It's a complex profession. It's difficult, but like days like today, we celebrate the rewards. Unfortunately, Indiana is seeing about 35% of our teachers who are coming into the profession between 1 year and the third year, they're leaving the profession. So that is alarming at best, because we know it's going to take great dedicated teachers to make our state move forward. But in the same respect, we had an uptick of 2,000 licenses for the first time in 10 years. We've seen that increase. We attribute that a lot to our department with the teacher effectiveness, but also the efforts of the field to really retain and mentor and try to keep those good people into the trenches.
When you talk about public education, there are a lot of people in various corners who feel that in this particular state, public education is maybe a little bit under attack from the state legislature. You're there. Do you get that feeling, and are there certain disconnects between what's happening out here in the communities and what's happening in Indianapolis in terms of public education?
You know, I think it's important to remember 90% of our students of Indiana, the 1.2 million students, are in public schools. And we are a choice state. You know, we say we're okay with choice, but it needs to be quality choice. But the biggest choice that we see is public school to public school transfer. And so public schools are still primarily the choice for the majority of students in Indiana. I realize there are students who aren't in a good fit and they need to make some choices, and the parents help them do that, and I respect that as well.
Do you think that there is a disconnect between that funding aspect, because that part of that is where a lot of it comes from? They say that teachers, now everybody will say teachers aren't in it for the money, but we hear that a lot. But is teacher pay part of that issue with being able to get people into that? And is that something that the legislature has a hand in, or is that all a local decision?
Absolutely. I mean, we're over half of the state's budget, and so we get a lot of attention and a lot of noise, but we surveyed the entire teaching field for the first time in Indiana last year, and 88% of them reflected in their response that pay matters. So we can't ignore that. We know some districts are working really hard to get those salaries up, but some districts want to work hard at it, but have some parameters around their own funding that's become problematic. But there can be a disconnect with that at the State House.
Can you talk about what the Indiana Department of Education does to help support schools in the area of mental health for schools, for students?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Indiana is one of only 2 states right now, us and Maryland, who have someone who's dedicated to that social emotional learning. We decided that about 6 to 8 months ago to say we have to have someone who's owning it. Although there's a lot of work in that area, we have to have a particular person who's owning the work, owning the plan, owning the resources. And so that person has done a great job. It is high needs right now with we call it a multi-tier systems of support, where we're trying to look at our systems of care between schools and other agencies to get kids connected to the care that they need for mental health. It is desperately an issue, it goes right into school safety, where we're talking about a lot of issues with school safety and say we have to be proactive, recognize there are no yellow flags, or if there's a red flag, it's a red flag, but that goes back to that social emotional piece.
Can you talk about the Indiana Secured School Safety Program and whether you think that is an initiative that will continue to grow and expand?
Yeah, it's a great program. It started before my time and it's continued. As an administrator, I went through that program, but we had the largest school safety academy last year. We have about 1,200 people there in attendance. We certify over 2,000 school safety specialists. It goes from anything from training of inclement weather, how to run safe bus routes, to active shooter training, and so a lot of pieces to it. We've invited our partners and our friends from across the nation to come and receive that training as well and develop their own in other states. We don't want to be the keeper of the knowledge with something that great, but I do think it'll expand. We just need funding. You know, a lot of it is we spend $50 million a year on assessment and $10 million in safety. So the priority and the message there gets a little muddy and it causes us to pause, but the School Safety Academy is definitely a great resource for our state.
We talked about, before we started this conversation, technology was kind of the last thing. A lot of schools are being able to do that. With digital, and I'm going to read this because this was a question that I kind of reached out to somebody about. With digital initiatives being a large part of the everyday curriculum for a lot of schools, digital equity, primarily access to high-speed internet, is a real issue for a lot of students, particularly those in economically disadvantaged families. What is the Department of Education doing to help bridge that gap for those? And we talked about the e-learning days and whether people can actually do that, or days like yesterday where the ice storms caused some people not even to have power.
Right.
How do you work through those issues in a state as rural as Indiana?
Yeah, real issues. I'm glad you're asking about it because it's real and it is impactful. So about 25% of our total schools, not districts, schools, are one-to-one. That means one device to one student, and they have the infrastructure at school to handle that kind of platform. About 60% are one to some, and then the rest of our schools really have access to devices. Now that too, we're pretty fortunate in access to the internet. We're about 96% that have a speed that is deemed appropriate for K-12. The issue becomes, like you mentioned, the equity at home. So we are trying to do some programs with partners. We got kind of involved in a contract that really brought it to a state contract that brought those costs way down, that make it more affordable for schools, more affordable for families if they have those programs. But we're also working with partners to say, can we not figure out how to maybe make a $10 a month deal for those families who qualify so they have access not as just students, but as families in those remote or high need areas. And so there are pockets of that going on that we do need to expand, absolutely, but we're in the middle trying to hook up those partners with the people who need to be connected and also helping look for that funding. We're in a lot of conversations about connectedness, and you're exactly right. A lot of it is the home piece.
The online education seems to continue to be growing. We're talking about the technology. Looking down the line and as being someone in a state and seeing the larger picture, do you see a day when more of our public instruction ends up online, as opposed to, because more colleges are going to that, as opposed to brick and mortar buildings which are expensive to keep up?
Yeah, absolutely. And this year we saw our highest numbers in enrollment into our virtual schools. Now we have virtual schools and we have virtual programs within traditional schools. We have hybrid programs. So we're kind of all over the place with virtual. We're watching right now, I know the governor's office, our General Assembly, the Department of Education, we're watching right now the performance of those students who are 100% in virtual education or virtual schools. We have some concerns about some of that as far as, are they attending, are they actually participating, do they have the support that they need, is the curriculum viable, is the instruction actually of quality. So we are watching and asking a lot of questions, but I think it's growing pains. Like you mentioned, higher education's going that way. There are a lot of situations that lend themselves to that's the appropriate platform, but we have some homework to do.
You're watching In Focus on WGTV Channel 11. We're spending a few minutes with Dr. Jennifer McCormick. Appreciate your time greatly. Can you explain the new Pathways graduation requirements and some of the ways that school systems are creatively collaborating with businesses and higher education institutions to prepare for the new requirements?
No. No, that's a great question. So yes, it is very complex, and I know parents are asking questions. I know schools are asking questions. Upcoming freshmen are asking some really great questions to say, how does this look like? Really, in a gist, there are 3 buckets. You still have to earn your credits, but the second bucket is you have to have work-based learning experience or project-based learning, some type of maybe a co-curricular, extracurricular participation, have a job. Something has to fall in that bucket too. The third bucket looks more traditional in that you have to pass a certain test, that is to be determined, or it could be a military entrance exam, it could be a workforce credentialing. There are more layers to become a graduate now. So schools are trying to figure out how that capacity is going to look so that students have access to a lot of different options. But again, some opt in early. 3% of our high schools opted in early for this year, so it's very, very raw. But we're gearing up because that incoming freshman group will be under that new graduation requirement. So we're trying to get guidance out to parents, to school leaders, to school counselors who are going to have to explain a lot of it, to teachers, and so we've got a lot of work to do, but we're going down the right track.
There's been a lot of hate for the I-STEP test. It's
Yes.
going away. There's a new one coming in. Can you tell us whether you think this will help the complaints about having to teach to the test? Do you think schools are going to see higher results from this? What are the changes that can be expected?
I hope so. So iLearn is coming in. It's going to look more systemic, where from even pre-K all the way to high school, there's alignment, there's predictability, it's an informing type of test. How you do on the first grade would look maybe how you may perform on that second grade. Also, it's meant to guide instruction better, as it is computer adaptive. So as students get questions right, it gets harder. If students aren't getting the questions right, it goes back down to their level so that we can better gauge where they're landing. So I'm not a big believer in taking tests for the sake of taking tests. I want it to mean something. I want scholarship to be on the line. I want college admission to be on the line. I want, instruction to be informed by it. I want parents to understand where their students actually are performing. Hopefully our new system will lend itself to that. We have to give an exam. It's the federal requirement, and they give us $1 billion, so we'll probably follow that requirement. But it's nothing's perfect with exams, but I certainly hope this is a better system.
You've decided not to run for office, and you announced that. Can you talk to us about why you made that decision?
Yeah, it's a bittersweet decision. When I got into this office, I made the commitment to get into it for kids, to help the situation out, to calm the field, and be a department that's more resource and guidance. Before, for many years, it's control and command, and it just does not work. I've been in the trenches, and we need guidance, we need support, we need resources. We don't have the capacity to do it by ourselves. So we have a great team at the department, but when I got into it, I was almost naive in a lot of ways to think everybody would want that governance structure to change and that everybody would be willing to make some really hard choices and decisions. And with a lack of appetite to make some of those in the governance structure, I've just decided that, we'll serve out the term and we'll do a great job, and their team will work as hard as we've been working for the last 2 years. We've accomplished a great deal, and I feel like if you talk to the local schools, they have felt that support. Higher ed, pre-K, people are very pleased with the direction. But I got in it for the right reasons, and I'll get out of it for the right reasons.
Last question, if it's okay. The state legislature has actually voted to, I believe in 2024, make this position, your position that you have now, an appointed position, as opposed to the elected position that it is. As someone who has been in the trenches, you've been a teacher, can you give us your assessment as to whether this position should be something that the voters have a decision in, or is making this an appointed position the right way to go?
From the beginning, I have voiced that I understand the need for the governor's office and my position to be somewhat in alignment with goals. And I understand that because of resources. I understand that because of the fighting that persists if you don't have some of that alignment. I've lived through that, and that is hard on the field. So I understand that. But I also, when we're over half of the state's budget, I know the importance of people's voice. And so other states have figured out if you have a state superintendent who's an appointed position by the governor or or the state board or whomever's going to make that appointment. In Indiana, it would probably be the governor, but they have a voice in other ways. So for instance, the State Board of Education, some elect people onto that. So what concerns me with the direction Indiana is going, the state board, my office, would all be under the control of the governor's office. And it's not a personal thing against our current governor, regardless of the governor. I just think that is a lot of authority over education that is, again, I think people's voice is very important in over 50% of the state budget.
Dr. Jennifer McCormick, Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Indiana, we greatly appreciate you giving us some time today.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Remember, if your not-for-profit organization has an event that you want us to know about, send us a flyer at least 2 weeks ahead of time to wctv@iue.edu. Again, at least 2 weeks ahead of time, we'll be happy to get it on. There is no charge to not-for-profit organizations for using the community bulletin board. Also, for educational institutions, we do have an education bulletin board, and again, there's no charge for providing us information about upcoming plays, concerts, things of that nature that you want the community to be aware of. A couple of things you should know. The Richmond Police Department is conducting a hiring process for the position of police officer. Preliminary testing, can be done until January 4th. If you need more information, contact Major John Bales. His information is there on the screen. The Gingerbread House competition at the Wayne County Historical Museum is wrapping up. The award ceremony is actually going to be on the 15th of the month at 3:30 during a mix and mingle with St. Nick. Sounds like fun. For more information, check them out, waynecountyhistoricalmuseum.org. It's the holiday season, so obviously lots going on in the communities as far as holiday events. In Centerville, it's Christmas in Centerville this weekend from 9 to 7. A lot's going on. Open house at Warm Glow Candle Outlet, Jingle Jam Show at the Family Center, the Lighted Parade at 6, activities, crafts, snacks, trolleys, and more. Also at the Centerville Public Library, they're going to have a selfie booth. Lots going on. Just go over to Centerville and have a good time. When you're done with Centerville, or before you go to Centerville, check out Hagerstown. Hagerstown's Hometown Christmas is going on this weekend. Bundle up the family. Enjoy carriage rides, carolers, craft bazaar, cookie walk, appearances by jolly old St. Nick. That's going to be a tired guy on Saturday, and more. Go check it out. The Holiday Farmers Market second annual is taking place at the Richmond Farmers Market. They're in the Richmond Senior Center at 1600 South 2nd Street. That's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Holiday Art Mart continues at RAM, and the opening reception and artist meet and greet is taking place this Saturday from 1 until 4. The Rosemary Weigel Frostbite 5K is going on at Glen Miller Park. That's a beautiful run. Running in the winter. No, I don't think so. But check it out. Go to the Richmond Parks Department website if you need more information. The Celebration of Lights is also going on this Saturday from 6 to 9 in Glen Miller Park. The Lynn and Friends Show, an annual event, is going to be taking place this Sunday, the 2nd at 7 p.m. at First Presbyterian Church. Great lineup of entertainment there. RSO goes to the movies. Lots of classics from yesterday and today. That's December 2nd, 3 p.m. Check them out. richmondsymphony.org if you need more information. And of course, the Christmas festival continues in the Depot District Tuesday nights, December 4th and 11th from 5 to 9. Remember, replays of this show can be seen tomorrow night at 8 p.m., also Saturdays at 8 a.m. and 9 p.m., Sundays 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. The program is also available on WGTV Online, which you can find if you go to our website, wctv.info. Audio of the program available Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. on G1013 and 100.9 ESPN Radio WKBV. Next week's show, Stephen Roy Goodman, who's host of Higher Education Today, will be in town, and we'll talk to him for a few minutes, and we'll also talk to some of the folks from IU East, find out what's happening at the campus. Thanks a lot for watching this evening's show. Have yourself a fantastic weekend.